Okay, I want to welcome everyone to our Know Your Rights for Reasonable Accommodations and how to ask for them. I'm Denise Corson. I'm with the Employment Committee. And I'd like to introduce you to a few people from the Commission on the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. First, I'd like to introduce Ernest Covington. He's our Executive Director. If you want to say a quick hi, Ernest.
Hi, everybody. Good evening.
And then we have a few of our committee members here. Betsy Beach, if you wanted to say a quick hello.
Betsy?
Okay. Well,
hello, welcome. I am here.
Okay. Hi, Betsy.
All right. Something funny's going on, but hello, I do welcome you.
We have Jeannie Valdez.
Hi, everybody. How is everybody? Glad to be here tonight.
And Paul, do you want to say a quick hello?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. And I'd like to introduce our presenter, Liz Hubbard. She is a staff attorney at the Disabilities Rights Center. And I'm going to let her do her PowerPoint presentation. And again, if you have questions, you can put them in chat, or after the PowerPoint, you can turn your cameras on and feel free to ask questions. Thank you, everyone. I'll let you go, Liz.
All right, just give me 1 second to set up. And all right, good evening, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Hubbard, and I am from Disability Rights Rhode Island, which is the protection and advocacy organization for the state of Rhode Island. And we do a lot of different types of legal advocacy for individuals with disabilities. And tonight, though, specifically, we're going to talk about employment rights and work incentives. So just a quick legal disclaimer to start. This presentation contains some general legal information about the law and legal practice. However, the information is not specific legal advice and shouldn't be treated as such. So you should not rely on this information in the presentation as an alternative to legal advice from your lawyer or other professional services provider. So in simpler terms, if you're interested in seeking, legal advice about your situation, please give a lawyer or us, us as their attorneys, or another lawyer a call, and we'd be happy to talk to you. So a little bit about Disability Rights Rhode Island. As I said, we're the designated protection and advocacy agency for the state of Rhode Island. We provide free legal services to individuals with disabilities and with disability-related, regarding disability-related legal issues. We have several different federal grants that cover different issues and different types of disabilities. For this presentation, we're focusing on our protection advocacy for beneficiaries of Social Security, protection advocacy regarding assistive technology, and the PAIR grant, which covers people with different types of physical impairments, and the CAP grant, which talks about, which is regarding vocational rehabilitation services, which in the state of Rhode Island is ORS. And I'm just going to take a quick moment. If people need me to change my pace or, need me to talk in a different manner, please feel free to send a message or use the talk slower, talk faster feature. Okay, so the employment areas that we're going to be talking about tonight are vocational rehabilitation, which is ORS in Rhode Island, transitioning off of benefits, and employment discrimination. specifically asking for a reasonable accommodation, how to start that process. So some people here might be already familiar with the Office of Rehabilitation Services, ORS, but they are the state agency that provides assistance to people with disabilities who are looking to get a job, seeking employment. So we help people who are consumers of ORS, so people are getting services from them. If they have any issues or concerns, we can give them advice about their situation and provide them information about their rights. And we can also, help them problem solve and figure out how to resolve their situation with ORS. If the situation is something that's more problematic, we can sometimes provide them with representation at mediation or ORS hearings. Oftentimes, though, we do negotiation, but if you have questions about that, you can go to our publication, which is on our website, which I will provide at the end of this presentation. We have a publication on there called A Consumer's Guide to Vocational Rehabilitation, which provides a lot of information about your rights as an ORS consumer. And it's been recently updated. So if people haven't taken a look at it in a while, it might be worthwhile checking it out. So we're going to talk about work incentives. One of the most common concerns people have about transitioning off benefits and going back to work is that they're really worried about losing their healthcare coverage, specifically Medicaid and Medicare. And for many people, this is what we call a barrier to employment. If somebody really needs that health coverage, which most people do, then losing that is a real concern. So the Social Security Administration has specific regulations that are called work incentives that help people keep their health coverage if they want to go back to work. So our agency helps provide people with information about those work incentives if they are looking to transition off benefits and to working. So if you're on Social Security Disability Insurance, otherwise known as SSDI, if you begin to work while you're on SSDI benefits, you can still continue to qualify for Medicare benefits, even if you're no longer receiving a check. So there could be some time that you actually will still get your Medicare, even though you're working. However, you might have to pay a premium, which is sort of like the premium you would pay for private insurance if you are seeking to continue the Medicare benefits. Social Security is two different programs, SSDI and SSI. So some people are on Social Security insurance, which is known as SSI. If you want to go back to work while you're on SSI, you could still qualify for Medicaid as long as you're still receiving a check, no matter how small. So the way that SSI is calculated is that they have a couple factors that they look at in calculating your check. And when they do that, they can adjust your the size of your check based on the amount of income. So the more income you get, the smaller your check will be. But you can have a really tiny check because of your work and still qualify for Medicaid, even if you're getting that really small check. If you stop being eligible to receive the check, though, because of earnings, you might still qualify for Medicaid under something called 1619B of the Social Security Act. And if you need to transition to that, you should contact Social Security Administration, contact your local office, and talk to somebody there about switching over to 1619B. So in Rhode Island, there's also a different program called the Sherlock Plan. So the Sherlock Plan is a program that allows people who qualify for Social Security disability standard, but are working to pay a premium based on their earnings to what we call buying into Medicaid. So in that respect, what you're doing is paying a monthly premium similar to what you would do with private insurance, but it's to keep your Medicaid instead of private insurance. And a lot of people do choose to keep their Medicaid rather than pursuing private insurance because they're able to continue with their treatment plan that they have now. So that is definitely something to look into if you are transitioning off benefits. And if you want to apply for the Sherlock Plan, you should contact your local Medicaid office and make sure you write Sherlock Plan on any application that you make to be on the Sherlock Plan. So what's really nice about the Sherlock Plan is that there's no minimum number of hours or minimum earnings that you must meet. And so you don't have to work a certain number of hours to qualify. But there is a net income limit, which is pretty high. It's 250% of the federal poverty level. There's also an asset limit, which is $10,000 for an individual or $20,000 for a couple. So assets are things like bank accounts, a second car. You can take a look at the regulations and find out what assets are, or contact our office or an attorney to learn about what's counted as an asset. But the Sherlock Plan is nice in the fact that they allow people to build up those assets, which you can't do under Social Security, under SSI and SSDI programs. So having that ability to have that asset limit allows people to build up sort of some savings, which they normally wouldn't be able to do under regular Medicaid and Medicare law. So if you want more information about these work incentives, we have a brochure on our website, which is www.drri.org. You can also go to the Social Security's website, ssa.gov, which is actually a very user-friendly website, and you can find a lot of information looking there and searching there. If you have further questions, though, you can also contact our office directly, and our contact information will be at the end of the presentation. So the other part of this presentation is employee rights to reasonable accommodations. So many of you have heard of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Rehabilitation Act, and different state civil rights laws that say that employees have a right to a reasonable accommodation at work. So what is a reasonable accommodation? Well, a reasonable accommodation is any change or adjustment to a job, work environment, or even the job application process that would allow a person with a disability to apply for a job, perform a job, or enjoy equal access to employee benefits. So some examples of reasonable accommodations are screen readers or screen magnifiers for people who are visually impaired, amplified telephones for people who are hard of hearing, physical changes to your workplace, such as an accessible parking space if you need that, or a specialized chair if somebody needs a specialized chair to be sitting throughout the day, or an ergonomic keyboard for people who have things like carpal tunnel, things like that. In some work environments, also modifying your work schedule is also a reasonable accommodation. Some people would need that in order to make appointments for treatment, or splitting up the day because of their disability. So that could be another type of accommodation. So the question also is who should ask for a reasonable accommodation? So we would say in our office that if somebody is having difficulty performing the essential functions of the job due to their disability, they should consider asking for a reasonable accommodation. And they should do so as soon as possible. So what is an essential function? So an essential function of a job are functions of a job, sorry, are the tasks and duties that are required as part of the position. And you can usually find them in the job description or in the advertisement for the position. So that's a good place to start. So if you have a new job and you are looking for a reasonable accommodation regarding your, regarding looking for a reasonable accommodation in this new job, and you want to know what the essential functions are, look at the job description for the job that you applied for. Sometimes it'll be also an employee handbook if job descriptions are in an employee handbook. Or anything that is provided that's an official description of what your job is. So as we said, when should somebody ask? So we say talk to your employer as soon. Everything okay? All right, I'll continue. So when should somebody ask for a reasonable accommodation? So we would advise people to talk to your employer as soon as you think you may need a reasonable accommodation. You don't want to wait until you've received a warning or a negative review to ask for one. At that point, things can be harder. It doesn't mean you shouldn't ask for one, but it really is best to get ahead of it.
Elizabeth, can you stop right here for a second? We're going to switch interpreters.
Oh, sure, happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
That's it.
you can go. Thank you.
Give me a chance for a drink of water too. Okay.
Feel free to take a pause too as you speak.
All right. So, as I said, you should ask for a reasonable accommodation as soon as you think that you might be seeing an issue. It's always best to get ahead of it. And employers, usually want to keep an employee and work with them. So it is really good to start the process as early as you can, so as soon as you start to see any sort of issues. You can also ask for a reasonable accommodation even before you start a job. You already think that you're going to need the accommodation. It is good to have it set up before you start the job. And usually we say to people to ask for it, after the job has been offered, and an employer cannot rescind a job offer if you ask for an accommodation. So don't be afraid that somebody is going to take away the job offer if you have received one, because it is, illegal for them to rescind the job offer just because you asked for accommodation. So moving on to the next slide. So then the big question, how do I ask for a reasonable accommodation? So to obtain a reasonable accommodation, you only need to tell your employer that you need some sort of adjustment or change because of your disability. So that's all you really need to do to start it. But you do need to make that communication. So, you don't want to assume that your employer sees what's going on or is aware of what's going on, or that's related to your disability. So making sure you communicate to your employer is very important. You don't need to fill out any special forms or releases to your treatment providers, but it might help speed up the process if your employer has a special form, just because some HR departments do have forms that they use to process reasonable accommodation requests, and it might just go faster if you use that form. A doctor's note can be very helpful to the process, but it's not necessary to start the process. And it's not necessary to obtain a reasonable accommodation. On the other hand, an employer has the right to ask for medical documentation to verify that there is an actual disability-related need for your accommodation, or if they're looking for more information as to about your disability so they can figure out how to best accommodate it. Also, a request doesn't need to be in writing. You can make it verbally. but we always suggest that it's helpful to have a written record of your request. And that's so you can prove that you made it, and also it's so that you can prove the day that you made it and what exactly you said. So after the employee makes the request for a reasonable accommodation, the burden then shifts to the employer to start figuring out what can be done. So at that point, the employer should start a discussion with the employee regarding what options there are for reasonable accommodations. And often there's more than one option to resolve an issue. So this will means that there really needs to be some discussion about what is the best way to work this out. It might take several discussions with your employer before an accommodation can be set up. So try to be patient. The employer can't drag the process along, but on the other hand, you have to allow an employer some time to figure things out and work with you. And as long as the communication process is going, that's generally a good sign. So if you and your employer want to learn more about accommodations, you can ask, you yourself can ask your treatment provider, see if there's some recommendations that they can make. If your treatment provider doesn't know what accommodations you need, he or she can refer you to a person called an occupational therapist, who is somebody who has a specific license and degree and specializes in helping people to improve their functioning. So oftentimes occupational therapists have a whole repertoire of ideas and assistive technology that can help people to perform their job duties more easily. There's also a great website called great organization called the Job Accommodations Network. And they have a great website on www.askjan.org. And they're an organization that's purpose is to provide free confidential guidance to employees and employers regarding workplace disability accommodations. So both an employee can go there to get more information, and employers can as well. And they have a whole listing of different types of disabilities, different issues, and ways that employers can accommodate those disability-related issues. Also, Jan is happy to have conversations with employees, one-on-one conversations with employees and employers who are looking to include reasonable accommodations in the workplace. So sometimes, if picking up the phone and just talking to one of the people at Jan can be a big help, and they can brainstorm some ideas when people just have run out of ideas themselves, because they have background and knowledge to really problem solve and figure things out. Also, if you're a client of ORS, they also might be able to help you with resources for accommodations and evaluations. They can set up evaluations with different specialists regarding what types of technology might help you to perform your job. They also, in some instances, can help pay for the cost of those accommodations. So the big fear that people have is, what happens if my employer refuses to provide the accommodation? So an employer might refuse a specific accommodation if it's an undue hardship. So an undue hardship is, the definition isn't a very specific definition, because that really varies. What is an undue hardship varies from employer to employer. So we have different types of employers in different areas. There are stores, there are warehouses, there are offices, environments, there are outdoor environments. So what an undue hardship considers a whole bunch of different factors. And some of these factors include what the cost of the accommodation would be to the employer. And that would be looked at, something that's very costly would be looked at differently for a smaller company versus a much larger company. So the size of a company is a factor. There's also the factor of the impact on the functions of the company. Is it going to be a problem for the other functioning of the other employees? So that's the final factor to be considered, is the impact on the other employees. So oftentimes what the employer will do is that, well, what an employer should do is that if an employer says that a specific accommodation that's being requested is an undue hardship, what they should do at that point is they should offer an alternative accommodation that wouldn't be an undue hardship to them, but would still meet your needs as an employee. Another question is, can my employer offer something else as an accommodation? So as I said, if the employer can't provide the requested reasonable accommodation, they should offer a different one. And at that point, you should consider that accommodation, talk it over with your doctor or any treatment providers that might be able to help you figure out if this really will work for you or not. And if there's a reason that the accommodation that the employer is offering you would not work for you, then you should provide the employer with some information specifically as to why that accommodation would not work for you and your disability related needs. So this sort of back and forth of the employer offering the employee requesting accommodation A, the employer offering accommodation B, and the employee saying, no, B won't work. You should then start considering C and D, going through the alphabet. That process is called the interactive process. And it's basically the employer and the employee going back and forth and discussing all the options and communicating about what the employee's needs really are and what needs to be changed to help them be able to do their job versus what the limitations of the employer and what they can provide. So sometimes there are technological issues that the employer runs into, or there's some other concerns, and having the interactive process helps to work those concerns out and figure out, can we use this accommodation with our company's database, or with this amplified phone work with our phone system, things like that. And sometimes other people need to be brought in to the interactive process, like the IT department, or more people from the HR department, to really just help problem solve and figure this out. And hopefully the interactive process brings around more communication between the employee and the employer, so that everybody starts to understand what the employee's needs are and helps to figure out how can our company accommodate our employees' needs so they can be, do their job the best that they can. And then there's the question of, what if the employer refuses to provide the accommodation? So your employer has an obligation to at least discuss with you your request for reasonable accommodation. If your employer refuses to discuss it with you outright, then you would have the right to file a complaint. That also might happen if you start the interactive process and it just stops and you aren't getting any more communication from your employer. You might want to consider at that point to learn more about your rights at that point as well. So the ways that you can learn about your rights, we suggest that you talk to an attorney, and because there are a variety of federal and state laws that may cover your employer. And some employers are covered by just one set of laws. Some employers are covered by a whole bunch of different types of laws that each have different what we call statute of limitations, which is the time limits that you can file a complaint. So we suggest that you file, talk to an attorney and learn about your filing deadlines as soon as possible, and learn about all the different laws that might apply to your situation. And also learn a little bit more about any possible other solutions that you could be that you could come up with to help your situation. So if you have more, for more information, which is basically just the information I provided in this presentation, but in a much prettier, more readable format, we have a fact sheet on our website, which I said before is drri.org. But if you have specific questions or problems regarding your situation or somebody that you know, you should contact our intake office. And I should have put the phone number up, but it is 401-831-3150. And that is our intake office. And we're always happy to speak to people if they have questions. And you might be referred to an attorney, or you might just be provided with some information. But we're always happy to talk to people and educate them about their rights. So this is just slide. It's just where we used to be. Right now, we're all working remotely, like many. But our mailing address, we check our mail regularly, is at 33 Broad Street, Suite 601, Providence, Rhode Island. And our regular telephone number, which you can use a relay to call, is 401-831-3150. We also still have a TTY, and that number is on the slide. And we have a fax machine as well, though that is also getting replaced by email these days. We do a lot of conversations with people via email. So if you would like to contact us, as I said, please contact us. Give us a call. I think it's the best way is to just give a call or send an email to the general email, which you can find on our website. And we will be happy to sort of talk, have somebody will give you a call back and we'll try to talk to you about that situation. But if you're looking for some more general advice, you can, as I said, look at our fact sheet online. And you can also look at the JAN website, which was mentioned before, askjan.org. So now, if you're looking for other attorneys other than us, there are options which you can reach through the Rhode Island Bar Association. And their phone number is up on the slide. It's 401-421-7799. They also have on their website, a intake form, and you can try going there. And if you are looking for low-cost legal assistance, you might qualify for the Volunteer Lawyers Project. Not everybody qualifies for that, but you could try contacting them, and their phone number is on the slide as well. And just a statement that is attached to all publications regarding Social Security, just to say this document is funded in part through a Social Security grant. This is one of the grants that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. So those who Social Security reviewed this document for accuracy, it does not constitute an official Social Security communication. This document is printed and published or produced and disseminated at U.S. taxpayer expense. So Disability Rights Rhode Island produced this presentation with a grant from Social Security. And that is it. If you have any more questions, I will exit screen sharing. And
So anybody, if anyone has
please
any
feel free to
questions,
ask.
you can either open up your video one at a time and ask a question, or if you have trouble opening your video or you just prefer to do a chat, you can do that as well. Margie, would you like to ask a question?
Okay, I'm all set. Go ahead,
We're gonna
Margie.
switch interpreters, thank you.
Go ahead, Margie.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Margie Malloy, and I work at Ocean State Independent Living Center, and I run the Deaf Services Program. I work with a lot of clients, and some have jobs, and some are having issues with their jobs, with their employment settings. For example, a type of typical problem might be they want to get an interpreter for a meeting at work. But oftentimes that doesn't happen. Is that the type of thing that a consumer should contact you about, Elizabeth, for support on that?
We would be happy to talk to somebody about that issue. We have advocated for that in other cases in the past. As I said, I can't guarantee that we would necessarily represent somebody in a case on that, but we would happy to provide them with information, or at least have some sort of conversation with them about their situation. So I would definitely encourage people to contact our office if they're encountering something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have a question? You can either open your video or put it in chat. Paul?
Sorry, it took me a second to unmute. Hi, Liz. How are you? It's nice to see you. Can you speak to any reasonable accommodation for the application process, especially now with online applications? I'm seeing that people are having a very difficult time navigating through the entire process, some of which includes like psychometric testing. Is there a reasonable accommodation for that pre-employment? And that's my question. I'll let you answer. Thank you.
Yeah, I would think that the application process should be accessible. So if people are encountering issues, especially at a major employer, one of the bigger ones, I would definitely contact our office and let us know. And if you're encountering it at a particular employer over and over again, definitely let us know, and we would be interested in looking into that. Yeah, as we said, the ADA covers not just somebody who's employed, but it also covers the application process. So that is something that we would talk to people about.
Thank you, Liz. Does anyone else have any questions? Again, you can open your window or put something in chat if you have difficulty opening your window, or would prefer to chat. Margie?
Yes, I do have another question. I've been working with one consumer in particular who has applied for a job at Amazon. And this person has really been struggling because of the application process online. And the level of English that's used is very hard to understand the English. This person has a limited understanding of English. So how can Amazon provide access or support? I'm wondering, is that something that, could they have it in ASL, for example? Is that a fair question? Is that something they could do on their website? It seems like that would make things a lot easier for deaf applicants or people who want to apply but can't get through the application process. And I've worked with someone, like I said, who's had a terrible time accessing the application process. And there's no phone number to call on Amazon to get any kind of support. this person, I'm just wondering if there's some way this could be worked on.
Yeah, that is a very good question and a good example of, a larger employer having an online application process that isn't necessarily accessible to everyone. So I guess, I don't know, is the application issue that the questions themselves are difficult to understand? Or is it, certain directions or?
Yeah. I would say it's the language, yes. Inaccessible use of the English language. The questions are very hard to understand.
So that's
Even
another.
even if they were simplified, however, I think there would still be a problem accessing the English. That's the real barrier, is the language. They really should have some other way for applicants who want to work for that company to not have to be proficient in English, because that's really a barrier.
So as I said, each situation is different. You'd have to analyze it, employer by employer, employee by employee. So I would encourage that individual to contact our office and, talk about their situation with our intake office and perhaps one of the attorneys eventually, to figure out if there's any sort of issues that could be resolved. And as I said, looking at askjan.org, they might have some information about online applications. So that might be one place to start if you wanted to get some information. But I would also suggest that this person contact us and we'd be happy to talk to them.
Yeah, that sounds great. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Does anyone else have any questions? Again, you can open up your screen or feel free to put your question in chat. I think that might be it. We'll give everybody another minute if there's any questions. And I think, we can maybe get back to everyone on if there is a way that we can get bigger organizations. So if, Amazon is such a big employer, I mean, that's a great, like if they make something, then that can be something that's shared with so many other people. So that's like I said, a great example of how maybe we can make an impact with the Commission on the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. So anybody else have anything else to add? Well, I thank everyone for coming tonight. And again, hopefully we will have, Margie has a question.
Sorry, I know I'm asking a lot of questions. I was just wondering if maybe there could be some sort of a Zoom meeting set up for people who are interested in maybe asking questions of Elizabeth in particular. I mean, I'm wondering if that would be a possibility, that people could just have a more interactive meeting with you where they could discuss their situations and get some tips from you. Is that something that would be something you'd be willing to consider?
I would love to talk to you individually about that. Maybe, so definitely I'll get your information, and if we can maybe email each other about that, that'd be something, I could follow up with you on. And
I
I'd
could
be interested in exploring that.
Margie, I'll give Liz your email information.
Excellent. That would be great. Thanks. I think we'd have a lot to.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Any other last questions? Well, again, we thank you all for coming, and we're hoping to keep doing future webinars on topics and hopefully have some follow-up information. I know the commission is looking into having more links on their webpage for both employers and employees, so we're going to start developing that. So some of these resources we talked about tonight will be on that page. So as we develop more resources, we'll put that on the page so you can refer back to it. And again, please feel free to contact Ernest at the commission if you want future webinar topics that we can look at. So again, thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you again at some future webinars. Thank you again, Liz. Thank you, our
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And it was good to see a lot of you again. And as I said, thank you again. This was really great. And if you have further questions, contact our office. We're always happy to talk to people. Thanks again.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, Denise.
Bye.